Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Haven, staring at the endless black space ahead. His hands gripped the metal rail so tight his knuckles turned white. The fuel gauges showed red numbers that made his stomach twist. 3 months they had been searching. 3 months of begging at the doors of alien worlds only to hear the same answer every time. No. Behind him, Lisa Carter looked up from her computer screen. Her face showed the same tired worry that lived in everyone's eyes now. She had just finished reading the latest message from the Altarian Council. 15 words that crushed their hopes again. The Altarian people cannot accept plague carriers. Your request is denied. 15 rejections, Lisa said quietly. Her voice cracked a little. 15 different ways to say we're not welcome anywhere. Jake did not turn around. He kept watching the stars as if they might show him an answer. 50,000 people lived on this ship. 50,000 men, women, and children who had done nothing wrong except be born in the wrong place at the wrong time. Their grandparents had been colonists on Kepler 442b. Good people who tried to build a new life among the stars. Then the plague came. The sickness killed millions across the galaxy. Worlds went dark. Entire species nearly died out. Someone had to be blamed, and the finger pointed at the human colony. They said the colonists made the disease in their labs. They said humans were trying to wipe out all other life in the galaxy. It was a lie, but lies can be stronger than truth when people are scared and angry. Even after proof came out showing the colonists were innocent, it was too late. The damage was done. Every alien government, every trading post, every space station treated these humans like walking death. Their children and grandchildren carried the shame of a crime they never committed. Now those grandchildren were dying in the cold metal halls of the New Haven. Ben Walsh, the ship's captain, walked onto the bridge. His uniform hung loose on his thin frame. Nobody had been eating well for weeks. He nodded to Jake and Lisa, then checked the ship's status on his tablet. The numbers were bad and getting worse. How much time do we have left? Jake asked. Ben looked at his screen for a long moment. 2 weeks, maybe less. The air recyclers are breaking down faster than Roy can fix them. We're down to emergency food supplies. Jake felt something cold settle in his chest. 2 weeks. He had known it was bad, but hearing it said out loud made it real. In 2 weeks, the New Haven would become a floating tomb. What about the Zephyrians? Lisa asked. Their message said they were still thinking about it. Ben shook his head. Got their answer an hour ago. They're afraid we'll bring human contamination to their pure worlds. They suggested we try the Outer Rim territories. Jake almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. The Outer Rim territories were empty space, dead worlds, and pirates. Even the criminals out there would not take them. Dr. Amy Rodriguez entered the bridge, her medical uniform stained with sweat and worry. She had been working in the ship's hospital for 18 hours straight. Her dark hair was pulled back and her eyes showed the weight of watching people die. We lost 3 more today, she said simply. 2 elderly, 1 child. Malnutrition and system failure. The families are asking me when we'll find a place to land. She looked at Jake. What do I tell them? Jake had no answer. He was supposed to be their leader, their hope. But hope was running out with the fuel and the food and the clean air. Chief Engineer Roy Stevens came up from the lower decks, oil on his hands and frustration on his face. He was a big man who had spent his whole life making broken things work again. But even he had limits. The main engine is failing, Roy said without introduction. I can give you 1 more jump, maybe 2 if we're lucky. After that, we're stuck wherever we end up. 1 more jump. Jake looked at the star chart on the main screen. They had tried every civilized world within reach. The Crystalline Consortium had called them biological terrorists. The Hive world said humans were a threat to galactic stability. Even the Ethereal Alliance, who claimed to love all living things, had turned them away. Lisa walked over to the navigation computer. She had been their communications officer for 5 years, handling the endless stream of rejections with professional calm. But Jake could see the cracks showing. There is 1 place we haven't tried, she said slowly. Where? Ben asked. Lisa brought up a section of the star map that everyone usually ignored. Sol system. Earth. The old homeworld that humanity had abandoned 300 years ago when they joined the Galactic Federation. Earth is dead, Ben said. Everyone knows that. Climate disasters, poisoned oceans, dead cities. That's why our ancestors left in the first place. Maybe, Lisa said, but I've been picking up signals from that direction. Weak ones, but they're there. And they sound human. Dr. Rodriguez moved closer to the screen. Human, that's impossible. Earth was evacuated centuries ago. I thought so too, Lisa said. But listen to this. She played a recording of static and interference, then filtered it through the computer. Hidden in the noise was something that made them all freeze. A voice speaking English, faint but clear, giving what sounded like weather reports for various Earth cities. Roy scratched his beard. Could be old automated systems. Dead cities sometimes keep broadcasting for years after everyone's gone. Could be, Lisa agreed. Or it could be something else. Jake stared at the tiny dot on the screen that marked Sol system. Earth. Home to nobody, according to all the official records. A dead world spinning around a lonely star, too damaged to support life. But they were already dead here, drifting between the stars with nowhere to go. What did they have to lose? How much fuel would it take to reach Earth? He asked. Ben worked the calculations on his tablet. Everything we have left. If we're wrong, if there's nothing there, we won't have enough power to go anywhere else. Jake looked around the bridge at these people who had become his family over the long months of exile. Lisa, who never stopped trying to find them a home. Ben, who kept the ship running when it should have fallen apart. Amy, who fought death every day in the medical bay. Roy, who worked miracles with broken machinery. In the corridors beyond the bridge, 50,000 people waited for news, for hope, for anything except another rejection. Children who had never seen a real sky. Parents who watched their families waste away. Elderly who remembered stories of better times that seemed like fairy tales now. We have one jump left, Jake said finally. We can die here in empty space, or we can die trying to go home. Home? Amy asked. None of us have ever been to Earth. Jake nodded toward the screen showing Sol system. Maybe. But it's the only place in the galaxy that hasn't said no to us. Yet. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of failing life support systems and the distant sound of people moving through the ship's corridors. Somewhere in the medical bay, someone was probably dying right now. Somewhere else, a child was asking when they would find a new world to live on. Lisa looked at the star chart, then at Jake. It's a long shot. A very long shot. Everything's a long shot now, Jake replied. At least this way we're going towards something instead of just waiting to die. Ben nodded slowly. I'll set course for Earth. Roy, can you give me enough power for one more jump? Roy rolled his shoulders. I'll give you what I've got. After that, we're in the hands of whatever gods watch over fools and refugees. Jake made the announcement to the ship an hour later. They were going to Earth, not because they expected to find welcome there, but because they had nowhere else to go. Some people cried. Some prayed. Some just stared out the windows at the stars and wondered if they would live to see another sunrise. The new haven turned toward Sol system, toward home, toward the last hope of 50,000 exiles who had been rejected by every civilized world in the galaxy. Behind them, the vast emptiness of space stretched away into forever. Ahead, Earth waited in the darkness, holding secrets that would change everything. The new haven shook as her engines died with a final groan of tired metal. Jake Morrison felt the vibration through the deck plates and knew their journey was over. One way or another, this was where it ended. Through the bridge windows, Sol system spread out before them like a memory made real. The sun burned bright and yellow, exactly like the pictures in old history books. But it was the third planet that made everyone stop breathing. Earth was blue. Not the dead gray rock they expected. Not the poisoned wasteland from the stories. Earth glowed with deep ocean blue and swirling white clouds. Green and brown patches showed through the atmosphere where continents lived and breathed. It was beautiful in a way that made Jake's chest hurt. That's impossible, Ben Walsh whispered. He stood beside Jake at the main window, his captain's tablet forgotten in his hands. The evacuation records say Earth was dying. The oceans were acid. The air was poison. Lisa Carter worked at her communication station, scanning every frequency she could find. Her screen filled with signals, more radio traffic than she had heard in months. I'm getting hundreds of transmissions, she said, her voice full of wonder. Weather reports, news broadcasts, ship traffic control. It's all in English. Roy Stevens looked up from his engineering console. Jake, you need to see this. My sensors are picking up massive structures in orbit. Space stations, shipyards, defensive platforms. This system has more industrial capacity than anything we saw in the core worlds. Dr. Amy Rodriguez pressed her face to the window beside Jake. Look at the moon, she said softly. Jake turned his attention to Luna, Earth's ancient companion. What he saw there made his knees weak. The moon's surface was covered with lights, great cities that sparkled like jewels against the gray rock. Domed structures stretched for hundreds of miles, connected by bright lines that could only be transportation tubes. 50 million people, Lisa said, reading from her sensors. That's the population reading I'm getting from Luna alone. Jake, there are more humans living on that moon than in most of the colony systems we visited. A new sound filled the bridge. The communication system was beeping with an incoming message. Lisa looked at Jake with wide eyes. Someone's trying to talk to us. Jake nodded. His mouth was dry. After months of rejections, of doors slammed in their faces, of being called plague carriers and worse, he was afraid to hope. But hope was all they had left. Open the channel, he said. The voice that came through the speakers was crisp and clear, with an accent Jake recognized from old movies, American English, the kind their great-grandparents might have spoken. This is Houston Control to the vessel New Haven. We've been tracking your approach for the past 6 hours. Your ship appears to be in distress. Are you requesting assistance? Jake stared at the communication panel like it might bite him. The voice was calm, professional, and completely without fear. No mention of quarantine, no demands for identification, no questions about where they came from or what they might be carrying. Houston Control, Jake said slowly. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Refugee Transport New Haven. We are carrying 50,000 civilians from Kepler 442b. Our engines have failed, and our life support is critical. We are requesting emergency assistance. The response came without hesitation. New Haven, this is Commander Todd Jackson, Houston Control. You are cleared for immediate approach to Luna Station. We're dispatching emergency tugs to assist with your trajectory. Medical teams and engineering crews are standing by. Welcome home, welcome home. Jake felt tears he did not know he was holding back run down his cheeks. Behind him, Lisa was crying too, and even Big Roy Stevens was wiping his eyes. Did he just say welcome home? Dr. Rodriguez asked. He did, Ben said, his voice thick. After all this time, someone finally said welcome home. 2 hours later, Jake stood in the docking bay of Luna Station and felt like he was dreaming. The station was bigger than most cities, with corridors that stretched for miles and ceilings so high they disappeared in the distance. But more important than the size was the activity. Thousands of people moved through the halls with purpose and energy. Human people, speaking English, wearing clothes that looked both familiar and strangely advanced. Commander Todd Jackson met them at the airlock. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes, wearing a blue uniform with patches that showed Earth and Luna together. When he saw Jake, he smiled and held out his hand. Captain Morrison, I'm glad you made it safely. I know it's been a long journey. Jake shook the offered hand, still hardly believing this was real. Commander Jackson, I have to ask. We were told Earth was dead. The evacuation records say everyone left centuries ago. Jackson's smile widened. Not everyone. About half the population chose to stay when the Galactic Federation was formed. We've been here the whole time, working to heal our world and build something better. Dr. Kate Williams appeared beside Jackson, wearing medical whites and carrying a tablet. She was a small woman with bright eyes and the kind of confident manner that came from saving lives every day. Captain Morrison, I'm Dr. Williams, Chief Medical Officer for Luna Station. We need to get your people to the medical bay immediately. I have teams standing by to help with malnutrition, system failures, and any other conditions they might have. Amy Rodriguez stepped forward. Doctor, I should mention that my people have been exposed to potentially dangerous conditions. The rest of the galaxy considers us plague carriers. Shouldn't you implement quarantine procedures? Dr. Williams looked confused. Quarantine? Why would we quarantine you? You're human beings who need medical help. But the plague, Amy insisted. The disease that killed millions across the galaxy. Everyone says we caused it. We know about the plague, Dr. Williams said gently. We also know you didn't cause it. You were victims, not criminals. Now let's get your sick people the care they need. Over the next few hours, Jake watched something he had not seen in months. His people, his 50,000 refugees, were treated not as dangerous outcasts but as family coming home after a long absence. Medical teams worked tirelessly to help the sick. Engineers examined the New Haven and immediately began making repair lists. Food service workers set up dining areas with more fresh food than the refugees had seen in years. Director Paul Martin of the Terran Coalition's Immigration Authority found Jake in the observation lounge. looking out at Earth through the great windows. Martin was an older man with a calm voice and steady hands. Captain Morrison, I want you to know that we've been monitoring human colonies throughout the galaxy for centuries. We knew what happened at Kepler 442b. We knew the accusations were false. Jake turned from the window. If you knew we were innocent, why didn't you help us? Martin's face showed old pain. Federation law prevented direct contact with member colonies. We tried working through diplomatic channels, but the damage had already been done. All we could do was wait and hope that someday our scattered children would find their way home. Scattered children? Jake repeated. Is that how you see us? That's exactly how we see you, Martin said firmly. Family that was forced to leave but never stopped being family. We've been waiting for you, all of you, for 300 years. Through the window, Earth turned slowly in the darkness, blue and green and alive. Jake could see city lights on the night side. Millions of points of brightness that spoke of thriving civilization. What happened down there? Jake asked. How did you heal a dying world? Martin smiled. Time, patience, and the determination to never give up. When everyone else headed for the stars, we stayed behind to fix what was broken. It took centuries, but we brought Earth back to life. And now we have clean oceans, restored forests, and cities that work with nature instead of against it. We have technology that most of the galaxy has never imagined, and we have space for 50,000 more humans who deserve a place to call home. Jake felt something he had not experienced in years. Peace. Not just the absence of conflict, but the presence of safety. For the first time since leaving Kepler 442b, he believed his people might actually survive. There's something else you should know, Martin continued. You're not the first refugees we've welcomed. Over the past century, humans from failed colonies have been finding their way back to Earth. We've learned to make room for everyone. Everyone. Everyone, Martin confirmed. Earth doesn't turn away its children no matter how long they've been gone or what others might say about them. Jake looked out at the planet below, at the moon city around him, at the humans who moved through the corridors with purpose and hope. After months of rejection of being called dangerous and unwanted, he had found a place that simply said welcome home. What happens now? He asked. Now you rest, Martin said. You eat real food, you sleep in real beds, and you start to heal. Tomorrow, we'll begin the process of finding permanent homes for your people. Some will want to stay on Luna. Others will prefer Earth itself. We have room for all of them. Jake nodded, feeling exhaustion settle into his bones. But it was good exhaustion, the kind that came after reaching safety rather than the desperate tiredness of endless flight. Outside the window, Earth continued its ancient dance around the sun, blue and beautiful and alive. Home to the humans who had never left, and now home to the humans who had finally returned. 3 months had passed since the New Haven arrived at Earth. Jake Morrison stood in his new office in the Terran Coalition building, watching the sunrise paint Luna City in shades of gold and silver. His people were scattered across the moon and Earth now, building new lives, finding work, making friends. Children who had never seen real sky were learning to play in Earth's restored parks, but Jake could not shake the feeling that something bigger was coming. Administrator. Helen Brooks knocked on his door and entered without waiting for an answer. She was a busy woman who ran the refugee resettlement program with efficient kindness. Her arms were full of files and her face showed concern. Jake, we need to talk, she said, setting the files on his desk. Admiral Turner wants to see you. It's about the galaxy. Jake followed Helen through the corridors of the Coalition building. The walls displayed pictures from Earth's long healing. Dead cities being rebuilt, poisoned rivers running clean again, forests growing where deserts used to be. It was a story of hope, but Jake sensed that hope was about to be tested. Admiral Nick Turner waited in the secure briefing room with several other officials. Turner was a hard man with gray eyes and scars on his hands from years of military service. He commanded the Terran Defense Force, Earth's military arm that most of the galaxy did not know existed. Captain Morrison, Turner said as Jake entered. Thank you for coming. We have a situation. The main screen lit up with a map of the galaxy. Red zones spread like infection across civilized space, growing larger each day. Jake recognized the pattern immediately. The plague, he said. It's spreading faster now, Turner confirmed. The same disease that destroyed the reputation of your colony is hitting core Federation worlds. The Altarians who rejected you 3 months ago are dying by the millions. The Zephyrian Empire has lost 6 colonies already. Dr. Amy Rodriguez entered the room, now wearing the blue uniform of Earth's Medical Research Division. Her work with Earth's scientists had changed her, given her access to equipment and knowledge she had never dreamed of. Behind her came Dr. Peter Clark, Director of Science for the Coalition. "Amy has made a breakthrough," Dr. Clark said. He was a tall man with wild gray hair and the excited manner of someone who lived for discovery. "Tell him what you found." Amy activated a holographic display that showed microscopic structures dancing in the air. "The plague isn't biological, Jake, it's technological. These are nanoscale machines designed to target specific genetic modifications." Jake stared at the tiny robots floating in the hologram. "Machines? Most alien species modify their genetics to adapt to different worlds," Amy explained. "Breathing different gases, handling different gravity, processing different foods. The plague targets those modifications specifically, but Earth's humans never underwent those changes." "Which means?" Jake asked, though he was beginning to understand. "We're immune," Dr. Clark said simply. "Every human who stayed on Earth, every refugee who's come home, every person descended from original Earth stock. The plague can't touch us." Admiral Turner stepped forward. "But there's more. Our intelligence networks have been monitoring the galaxy for centuries. We know more about what's happening out there than most governments know about their own territories." The screen changed to show Earth's industrial capacity. Shipyards that stretched for thousands of miles. Manufacturing plants that could build anything from medical supplies to starships. Facilities that dwarfed anything the galaxy had seen. "We don't just have immunity," Turner continued. "We have the cure."
"Our medical teams have developed a treatment that neutralizes the nanoscale plague."
"And we have the industrial capacity to mass produce it." Jake felt the weight of what they were telling him. Earth could save the galaxy. The same planet that had been abandoned by half of humanity could now rescue the species that had abandoned it. "But there's a problem," said General Patricia Hayes, speaking for the first time. She was a woman with steel in her voice and fire in her eyes. She represented the military's hardline position. "The same civilizations that are dying now are the ones who condemned your people to exile. They turned away 50,000 refugees rather than risk their precious political stability. The Altarians called us plague carriers," Jake said quietly, remembering Chancellor Veltar's cold rejection. "The Zephyrians said we were biologically inferior," Amy added, her own memories still painful. "The Crystalline Consortium voted to ban humans from 3 entire sectors," Turner said. "They didn't just reject your people, they tried to make sure you had nowhere else to go." Jake looked around the room at these people who had become his colleagues and friends. They were asking him to make a choice that would define not just Earth's future, but the future of galactic civilization. "What are you saying?" he asked, though he knew the answer. General Hayes spoke bluntly. "We're saying Earth owes the Galactic Federation nothing. They abandoned us. They rejected our children. They left humans to die in the cold of space while they enjoyed the benefits of technologies we helped develop. We could let them face this plague alone," Admiral Turner said. "Their governments chose to exclude humans from the galactic community. Maybe it's time they learned what exclusion really means." The room fell silent. Jake could hear the hum of air recyclers, the distant sound of people moving through the corridors outside. Luna City continued its daily business around them, unaware that the future of the galaxy was being decided in this room. Dr. Amy Rodriguez stepped forward. "Jake, I want to tell you what I've learned since coming here. Earth didn't just survive after the Exodus, they thrived. Do you know why?" Jake shook his head. "Because they chose to help each other instead of fighting each other. When the climate disasters hit, when the oceans turned acid, when the forests died, they didn't blame anyone. They didn't look for someone to punish. They just rolled up their sleeves and got to work fixing what was broken." She gestured toward the windows that showed Luna City's gleaming towers. "This civilization exists because our ancestors chose cooperation over revenge, healing over hatred. Are we really going to abandon those principles now?" Counselor Maria Santos, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. She was an older woman with kind eyes who represented Earth's civilian government. "Amy's right. The strength that built this civilization wasn't the ability to withhold help. It was the courage to give help even when it wasn't deserved." "But what about justice?" General Hayes demanded. "What about the 50,000 people who nearly died because alien governments were too proud and too afraid to take in refugees?" "Justice," Jake said slowly, thinking of the children who had starved on the New Haven, the elderly who had died in cramped corridors, the parents who had watched their families waste away. What would justice look like, General? Letting them face the consequences of their choices, Hayes replied. Letting them learn what it feels like to be turned away when they need help most. Jake walked to the window and looked out at Earth, blue and green and alive in the distance. He thought about his people, scattered now across Earth and Luna, building new lives after being rejected by every alien government in the galaxy. They had found safety here not because Earth owed them anything, but because Earth chose to help. Admiral Turner, he said finally, what would it take to distribute the cure throughout the galaxy? Turner consulted his tablet. A massive operation. We'd need to deploy the entire fleet, establish medical stations on hundreds of worlds, coordinate with governments that might not want to admit they need our help. How long? 6 months to a year, depending on cooperation from local authorities. Some species will be easier to treat than others, Dr. Clark added. We'd also need to modify the cure for different biologies. What works for Altarians won't work for Zephyrians or crystalline beings. It's doable, but it would require our best scientists working around the clock. Jake turned back to the room. And if we do nothing? Conservative estimates suggest that 60% of galactic civilization could collapse within 2 years, Turner said grimly. Entire species could go extinct. The Federation government would probably fall. We'd be looking at a new dark age, including human colonies, Amy pointed out. There are 17 human settlements in the plague zones. Our own people are dying out there too. That changed everything for Jake. This wasn't just about alien governments that had rejected them. Human beings were suffering and dying while Earth debated whether to help. But there was still the question of the aliens who had turned them away. The proud Altarians who had called humans plague carriers. The Zephyrians who had deemed them unworthy of citizenship. The consortium officials who had tried to ban humans from entire sectors of space. I need to know something, Jake said to Admiral Turner. If we do this, if we mount this massive rescue operation, what guarantee do we have that the galaxy won't just go back to treating humans as second-class citizens once the crisis is over? Turner smiled grimly. No guarantee at all. In fact, some of them will probably claim we created the plague in the first place, just like they blamed your colony. Then why should we help them? It was Amy who answered, her voice steady and sure. Because that's not who we are, Jake. We don't help people because they deserve it. We help them because they need it. The largest humanitarian mission in human history began on a Tuesday morning when Admiral Turner launched Operation Lighthouse. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the TCS Unity, Earth's newest flagship, watching as the Terran fleet dispersed across the galaxy. Each ship carried the cure that could save billions of lives. The Unity's crew was a mix of Earth-born humans and former refugees from the New Haven. Dr. Amy Rodriguez had taken her place as chief medical officer, coordinating the distribution of treatments that Earth scientists had perfected over sleepless weeks. Lisa Carter served as Jake's executive officer. Her communication skills now focused on saving worlds instead of begging for sanctuary. Their first destination was Altair Prime, the same world whose government had rejected them so coldly just months before. As the Unity dropped out of hyperspace, Jake saw a system in collapse. Ships drifted powerless between the planets. The great crystal cities that had once sparkled like jewels were now dark and empty. Medical teams to the transporters, Amy announced over the ship's communication system. All medical personnel prepare for emergency deployment. Jake opened a channel to the planet's surface. Altair Prime, this is Captain Morrison of the Earth vessel Unity. We are here to provide medical assistance for the plague outbreak. The response came immediately, but it was not the proud Chancellor Veltar who had spoken before. This voice was broken, desperate, filled with the kind of fear that came from watching civilization die. Unity, this is Acting Administrator Kelvan. Chancellor Veltar is. He died yesterday. We have lost over 300 million people. Our medical facilities have collapsed. We will accept any help you can provide. Jake remembered the Chancellor's exact words from months ago. The Altarian people cannot accept plague carriers. Your request is denied. Now that same world was begging for help from the humans they had called dangerous. Amy, prepare your teams, Jake said simply. We're going down, within hours. Earth's medical teams were working in the dying crystal cities. Dr. Rodriguez set up treatment centers in buildings that had once housed the bureaucrats who rejected human refugees. The cure worked quickly on Altarian biology, but the damage was already severe. Amy found Jake standing in what had been Altair Prime's central government building. The crystal walls that had once gleamed with internal light were now dim and cracked. Bodies lay in the corridors where they had fallen. "We're saving thousands," Amy reported. "But Jake, we lost so many before we got here. If they had let us land when we first asked, if they had been willing to work with humans instead of rejecting us, they would still be alive," Jake finished. He felt no satisfaction in being proven right. Dead Altarians did not make the months of exile hurt any less. Administrator Kelvin approached them, moving slowly on legs weakened by the plague. He was young for an Altarian, probably promoted only because everyone above him had died. "Captain Morrison," Kelvin said, his crystal-based voice cracking with emotion. "I must ask, why are you helping us, after what we did to your people, after how we treated you?" Jake looked at the young administrator, seeing genuine confusion in his alien features. "Because you need help," he said simply. "That's all the reason we need." The Zephyrian Empire presented different challenges. Their worlds were scattered across 50 star systems, and their rigid caste system made medical distribution complex. Colonel Danny Foster led a team of military engineers who worked with local authorities to establish supply chains that could reach every level of Zephyrian society. The Zephyrians had not just rejected human refugees. They had declared humans biologically inferior and unsuitable for civilized society. Now those same inferior humans were saving Zephyrian lives with technology that surpassed anything the Empire had developed. But it was at the Crystalline Consortium where the mission faced its greatest test. The consortium had done more than reject refugees. They had campaigned actively for humanity's expulsion from several galactic regions, claiming that humans carried genetic contamination that threatened other species. Commander Lisa Carter led the relief mission to New Geneva, the consortium's capital world. What they found there challenged every assumption about the plague's effects. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa said over the communication link. Her voice carried a mixture of horror and fascination. "The consortium beings aren't just dying. They're changing." Jake joined Lisa on the planet's surface, walking through cities of living crystal that were slowly going dark. The crystalline beings who made up the consortium were silicon-based life forms, more like living computers than biological creatures. The plague was affecting them differently than anyone else. Dr. Kate Williams, now heading Earth's Xenobiology Division, studied the affected consortium members with equipment that had never been designed for silicon-based biology. Her research revealed something disturbing. This plague was specifically engineered, she told Jake as they stood in a consortium medical facility. Someone designed it to target not just genetic modifications, but the fundamental biology of different species. It attacks Altarian crystal matrices, Zephyrian neural networks, and consortium silicon structures in completely different ways. "Engineered by whom?" Jake asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. "Someone who understood every major species in the galaxy well enough to design targeted weapons against them. Someone with access to biological samples, genetic databases, and advanced nanotechnology." Dr. Williams paused, checking her readings again. "Jake, there's something else. The plague's design includes specific immunity codes. It was programmed not to affect certain genetic patterns. Earth-human patterns? Exactly. Whoever made this plague intended for Earth humans to be the only survivors." The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. The plague had not been an accident or a natural disaster. Someone had created it deliberately, designed it to wipe out galactic civilization while leaving Earth humans untouched. The frame-up of the Kepler 442b colonists had been part of a larger plan. While medical teams worked to save lives across the galaxy, Jake authorized a secret investigation into the plague's origins. The trail led to places he did not expect. Dr. Rachel Green, Earth's leading archaeologist, led a joint expedition back to Kepler 442b, the dead world where Jake's people had lived before. Their exile held secrets that someone had tried very hard to hide. In the ruins of the original colony's research facility, buried under years of debris and neglect, they found data archives that had survived the abandonment. The files painted a picture of conspiracy that stretched back decades. "Jake, look at this," Dr. Green said, her voice tight with anger. She displayed holographic files that showed communication records, financial transfers, and research data. The colonists didn't create the plague. They were trying to stop it. The files revealed that the Kepler 442b research facility had been infiltrated years before the plague outbreak. Someone had planted evidence implicating the colonists in biological weapons research. The same someone had then released the plague, knowing that the false evidence would make the colonists perfect scapegoats. Who? Jake demanded. Who did this to us? Dr. Green highlighted a series of financial records and communication logs. The trail led back to Earth, but not to the Earth that had welcomed Jake's people. It led to a shadow organization within the original Galactic Federation government. A group that had believed humanity's expansion posed a threat to established alien civilizations. A rogue faction within the Federation's intelligence services, Dr. Green explained. They called themselves the Stability Council. They believed that human cultural influence was destabilizing the galaxy, that human colonies were growing too fast and becoming too independent. So they created a plague to kill everyone except Earth humans? Not exactly. They wanted to fragment humanity, break up the colonial expansion, force the scattered colonies to become dependent on alien governments for protection. The plague was supposed to be contained, controllable. Jake stared at the evidence files, feeling a cold anger settle in his chest. But it got out of control. They lost control of their own weapon. The nanoscale plague mutated, evolved, began targeting species they never intended to harm. By the time they realized what had happened, it was too late to stop it. The conspiracy had backfired spectacularly. The Stability Council's attempt to control human expansion had instead created a weapon that threatened to destroy galactic civilization itself. And they had made Jake's people pay the price for their failure. But the files revealed something else. The Stability Council still existed. Some of its members held positions in the current Federation government. They were watching Earth's rescue mission with growing alarm, realizing that humanity's emergence as the galaxy's savior threatened their carefully maintained control. Jake stood in the ruins of his people's former home, holding evidence that could destroy the reputations of dozens of alien officials. He had proof that humanity was not just innocent, but the victim of a conspiracy that had killed billions. He had the cure that could save the galaxy, and he had the military power to demand justice from those who had wronged his people. The question was what he would do with all that power. Jake Morrison stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Federation Council on Centauri Station, holding a datapad that contained enough evidence to destroy governments and topple civilizations. Around him sat representatives of 93 different species, their various forms of eyes all focused on the human who held their fate in his hands. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records showing payments to saboteurs, communication logs revealing the conspiracy, genetic analyses proving that the plague had been engineered specifically to frame the Kepler 442b colonists. Every piece of data pointed to the same conclusion. Humanity had been the victim of a deliberate plot that had spiraled far beyond its creator's control. Admiral Turner had positioned the Terran fleet throughout the galaxy, their ships carrying not weapons but medical supplies. For 6 months, Earth's doctors and engineers had worked without rest, distributing the cure to any world that needed it. No questions asked, no debts demanded, no political conditions imposed. The results spoke for themselves. Altair Prime was healing, its crystal cities beginning to glow with life again. The Zephyrian Empire had stabilized, their rigid caste system softened by shared suffering and human compassion. Even the crystalline consortium's silicon-based beings were recovering, their data networks humming with renewed activity. But the conspiracy's architects still held positions of power. Chancellor Veltar's replacement, Administrator Kelvon, rose from the Altarian section. His crystal form had regained much of its former glow, but his voice carried a humility that had been absent from his predecessor. The Altarian people formally apologized to humanity for our treatment of refugees from Kepler 442b, Kelvon announced. We offer full citizenship and reparations to any humans who choose to settle in Altarian space. We were wrong to turn away those who needed our help. Similar statements came from across the chamber. The Zephyrian Empire's new leadership requested Earth's membership in their defensive alliance. The Ethereal Alliance, whose worlds had been saved by human medical teams, offered to share their most advanced technologies. Even species that had never interacted with humans before pledged friendship and cooperation. But Jake's attention was focused on the section where the conspiracy survivors sat. Federation Intelligence Director Vexmore, whose agency had channeled funds to the saboteurs, Trade Commissioner Yilseth, who had helped coordinate the campaign against human colonies, Security Council member Talvin, who had voted to classify all humans from Kepler 442b as biological threats. They sat quietly, hoping their involvement would remain hidden, that the grateful galaxy would move forward without looking too closely at the past. Jake activated his datapad and began to speak. 6 months ago, 50,000 human refugees arrived at Earth's doorstep, rejected by every government in this chamber. Today, those same refugees are helping to save your worlds from a plague that has killed billions. But before we talk about the future, we need to address the truth about the past. The chamber fell silent. Jake could see fear in some representatives' faces, hope in others, and curiosity in most. The plague that has devastated our galaxy was not a natural disaster. It was not created by the colonists of Kepler 442b. It was engineered by members of this very government, as part of a conspiracy to control human expansion throughout the galaxy. Shocked, murmurs filled the chamber. Several representatives demanded proof. Jake provided it, streaming the evidence files to every screen in the room. Financial records, communication logs, research data. The conspiracy laid bare for all to see. The Stability Council believed that human cultural influence was growing too quickly, Jake continued. They feared that independent human colonies would destabilize their carefully controlled galactic order. So they created a weapon designed to fragment humanity and make our scattered colonies dependent on alien protection. Director Vexmore stood up, his insectoid features twisted with desperation. This is fabrication. Human propaganda designed to discredit legitimate Federation authority. Jake looked directly at the intelligence director. Your personal communication codes are all over these files, Director. Your agency funded the infiltration of our research facility. Your operatives planted the evidence that condemned innocent people to exile and death. Dr. Amy Rodriguez, now wearing Earth's blue uniform but speaking as someone who had lived through the persecution, stepped forward. 50,000 people nearly died because of your conspiracy. Children starved in ship corridors. Elderly died from despair. Families were torn apart, all to serve your political games. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Representatives who had lost billions of their own people to the plague demanded justice. Some called for immediate arrests. Others suggested trial by combat. A few of the more militaristic species openly discussed execution, but Jake raised his hand for silence. Earth has the power to demand justice, he said quietly. We could insist on trials, reparations, political restructuring. We could use our position as the galaxy's savior to reshape galactic government according to our preferences. Admiral Turner, watching from the observation deck, nodded slightly. The Terran fleet was more than capable of enforcing whatever demands Jake chose to make. But that's not who we are, Jake continued. Earth doesn't help people because we want to control them. We help because they need help. He turned to address the entire chamber. The Terran Coalition has no interest in joining your existing power structures. We're not here to become another galactic empire, or to demand tribute from the worlds we've saved. We're here to offer something different. Administrator Helen Brooks, representing Earth's civilian government, joined Jake at the podium. The Terran Coalition announces a new policy, effective immediately. Earth and all human settlements will maintain an open door for anyone, of any species who needs sanctuary or assistance. No political tests, no cultural requirements, no religious conditions. If you need help, you'll find it with us. The implications were staggering. In a galaxy where membership in alliances required complex negotiations and political compromises, humanity was offering unconditional welcome to anyone who needed it. Commander Lisa Carter, now serving as Earth's Director of Refugee Affairs, explained the practical details. We're establishing welcome stations throughout the galaxy. Any being fleeing war, persecution, natural disaster, or political oppression will find sanctuary at human facilities. We'll provide medical care, food, shelter, and assistance in finding permanent homes. Dr. Kate Williams added the medical perspective. Earth's research facilities will share all plague-related treatments freely with any government that requests them. We'll also provide training for local medical personnel and establish permanent research, Partnerships to prevent future outbreaks, but it was what Jake said next that truly shocked the chamber. As for the conspiracy's architects, they'll face justice, but not the kind you might expect. Director Vexmore, Commissioner Yilseth, Councilmember Talvin, and the others involved will be tried by tribunals focused on truth and reconciliation, not punishment. Several representatives protested loudly. How could Earth be so forgiving? How could they let such crimes go unpunished? Because punishment doesn't bring back the dead, Dr. Rodriguez explained. But understanding the truth can prevent future tragedies. These tribunals will establish a complete record of what happened, how it happened, and how to prevent it from happening again. Admiral Turner announced the military's role in this new paradigm. The Terran Defense Force will serve as a humanitarian intervention service. Our ships will patrol known conflict zones, providing protection for refugees and assistance for anyone facing persecution. We're not interested in conquest or intimidation. We're here to ensure that no one ever again faces annihilation alone. The transformation was immediate. Within hours of Jake's address, ships from across the galaxy began heading toward Earth's welcome stations. Refugees from wars that hadn't even reached the galactic news networks yet. Persecuted minorities fleeing oppressive governments. Scientists seeking resources for humanitarian research. Families simply wanting to live in a civilization that valued compassion over conquest. 6 months later, Jake stood on the same observation deck where he had first seen Luna City, watching as another refugee transport docked at the station. This one carried beings from a distant conflict that most of the galaxy hadn't even heard about yet. They would find the same welcome that Earth had offered the New Haven: immediate medical attention, food for the hungry, shelter for the displaced, and hope for the future. Dr. Rodriguez joined him at the window, now serving as Director of Galactic Health Services. Another 300 refugees, she reported. Mixed species, mostly families. They heard about Earth's open door policy from traders on the outer rim. How are we handling the influx? Jake asked. Better than expected. The Australian continent has been opened for new settlements. Luna City is expanding its residential sectors. And we're getting volunteers from some of the species we helped during the plague outbreak. Altarians are building crystal housing complexes. Zephyrians are sharing agricultural techniques. Even some consortium beings are helping with data processing for refugee registration.